This is the Roots and All podcast, and I'm your host, Sarah Wilson. Join me as I talk about all aspects of gardening with some of the top horticulturists from around the world. Welcome to Roots and All, where today I'm speaking with Olga Evans, co-founder of the Forest Bathing Institute and author of a new book exploring the science behind nature's healing power. We'll discover what forest bathing really means, whether you need an actual forest to benefit, and you'll learn practical techniques you can use wherever you are.
I grew up in Russia and I moved to UK in 2008. And in Russia and other countries in the area, it's very common to spend quite a bit of time during summer holidays, which are often 3 months in summer, like the whole summer. We spend in the countryside. And it's a very rustic way of spending your holidays because we often go to the countryside houses which have water, but no hot water. Sometimes they have electricity, sometimes they don't. No TV, no internet. And we spend whole 3 months being engaged in this atmosphere, often on the edge of the forest. And what I grew up, which I thought was a normal way of being, living, foraging every day gardening, just because the shops were so far away from those places we spent summer at, that we would rely mostly on the vegetables from our garden and the fruit as well. And I got very used to that. But then when I moved to the UK, started living here, I stopped, of course, having those breaks and that kind of lifestyle. And I saw that, especially when I moved to London, my health started declining. I started seeing that I wasn't feeling my best and I wasn't sleeping well at that time. I was experiencing anxiety, also depression. At the time, I also didn't know that I was misdiagnosed, but I had autism, so that didn't help. But one thing that I found, and I've tried lots of things, I've tried meditation, which was helpful, and yoga, but what I've seen was that even 15 minutes in a garden, in a communal garden in central London, and I'm talking central London, we were at the time at Farrington, and I saw that it changed how I slept, it changed how I felt. It was like the weight was lifted off my shoulders, and suddenly I could feel more grounded, more myself. I was creative. And so at the time, I met Gary, who actually introduced me to forest bathing and the concept of how nature can help our health and well-being, and the research that emerged from South Korea and Japan into Shinrin Yoku, which is forest bathing. And I was fascinated, but I was only using it really for my own health and well-being. And while I was interested in research, I was still thinking that I would continue living in a city. And, I was preparing to work in PR after finishing my uni. But then I saw such an impact that those breaks had on me that it kind of took over my life. And then when we went on our honeymoon, Gary and I decided that we might actually pursue more into what nature can bring us in terms of health and well-being benefits and the research behind it. So we started the Forest Bathing Institute in 2018, and we started it with very bold move, inviting some researchers from the US to come and test us. And they came and they said that they really liked what we were doing, and they thought that there was a lot of promise behind it. So after that, we started talking to the researchers in the UK, the researchers in other countries across the world, including Japan, where it all started, and also the landowners, and trying to basically understand better how nature can help our health and well-being, and also researching it, because it's one thing to know, and I think many of your listeners might know that nature is good for us and might feel it. But in order for us to implement it at a bigger scale, like going to NHS and making it part of green social prescribing, it is really important to show the science and the scientifically proven benefits, which we started doing and still are doing. So now we're working with around 100 universities worldwide. And we also work with all the major charities and organizations in the UK, but also consulting the government here and abroad on how we can implement nature into the healthcare system to help save and also to help us get better.
That's very encouraging to hear that it's being taken very seriously and, as you say, prescribed. But it's interesting what you said about being in the city, and forest bathing obviously says forest in the name, but are all green spaces equal? Do we need a forest, or can we do this in other locations?
That's a really good question, Sarah. And in fact, I just wrote an article for a magazine that will be hopefully coming out soon, Caduceus magazine, on that question. There are two ways to answer it, and there isn't a concrete answer, but I will probably just say what I think in my humble opinion. So there is a difference between the air chemistry between a park or a garden and a forest, especially if it's a, as we say, good quality forest with lots of variety of plants. And the thing is about forest bathing, lots of the benefits are thought to be coming from the airborne chemicals, which are also called volatile organic compounds. So once they enter our system through breathing or through the skin, they impact our immune system, they impact our stress levels positively. So they are thought to be a major component of why we feel so good when we go to the forests. But another thing that we need to bear in mind is that not all people have access to forests, and not everyone it's convenient to go to certain location that might be best suited in terms of air chemistry. So what we say is that we have to kind of weigh the two things, such as convenience and also safety, and also the benefits of the space, because there is science, of course, saying that the benefits of a more pristine space, such as ancient woodland, would be potentially higher. But then I argue, if someone is feeling uncomfortable in a forest environment, even if it's an ancient woodland, or if they feel stressed getting there, or maybe they feel like they don't like being in such a vast space, they prefer being in a park or a garden. So our physiology changes when we are stressed, and the benefits that we are receiving from forest bathing, from time in nature, they could be decreased, the benefits. So I would say that it's kind of very individual. That's why we can't say that forest bathing works a certain way for all individuals. It's very much works on a very personal level with each one of us.
I suppose it's a big question. And as you say, there has been a lot of research done into forest bathing and in countries like South Korea and Japan. But what are perceived to be, or what have proven to be, the main benefits to forest bathing?
So the main benefits so far have been shown that forest bathing can improve our immune system, and it can also decrease our stress levels and improve our sleep. But it can also regulate our blood pressure, which means if you have low blood pressure, it can help bring it up. And if you have high blood pressure, it can bring it down. It can also help with weight loss and weight management. And there are also studies now showing how it can help concentration, it can help attention, and also productivity, because in countries like South Korea, for instance, who arguably have taken forest bathing to the biggest scale level. So they are doing forest bathing for all groups. They're starting from prenatal and ending with, they do lots of things for corporates, and they help children at schools, especially children who have been through bullying and things like this, very uncomfortable experiences. So they have really incorporated it at all levels of our life, because they've seen so many benefits. And of course, they're still continuing the research. But I think for them, the existing research was enough of a proof to kind of start implementing it at all levels. And I think the problem that we had here in the UK, which is a reasonable issue that we were faced with. So forest bathing came from Japan. And if you know, in Japan, it's around 70% or so forests that they have. And we have, in comparison, we have much, much smaller percentage of forested areas here in the UK. And the thing is, the forests in Japan are very different to the forests that we have here in the UK. Especially in the south, we have more deciduous trees and they have more coniferous trees. So the difference would be also in the chemistry. And as we know, the chemistry of the air is one of the main components that were thought is impacting our benefits from forest bathing. And so for us, I think we are still, even though we've been doing it for 8 years now, the research and implementation of forest bathing, we are still kind of in a beginning stage, because in Japan, they've started researching in 1980s, because that was the response to the stress epidemic in the country at the time. But we've just started. And the argument is that our environment and our forests could be different to Japan. And maybe it's just about the Japanese plants that produce very specific air chemicals. And that's why you get the benefits from forest bathing. And hence we had to kind of not disregard, of course, there is promise in Japanese science, but we had to replicate all the science here in the UK, which we're still doing, to have determined that it's not just the forests or the plants that they have in Japan.
Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah, so place-specific benefits. And I just want to pick up on what you were saying about stress, because you use a term in the book, which is techno-stress. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. This was actually a revelation for us too, because one of the main researchers into forest bathing in Japan, Dr. Li, who is now our scientific advisor, he told us about that term. So in Japan, they actually see forest bathing as a response to technostress. And technostress is basically the stress that we get due to the overuse or inappropriate use of technology, in a sense that we don't take breaks from it or we spend too much time on it. And so in Japan in 1980s, if you look at their history, they were trying to push the economy quite a bit, same in South Korea. And you could see lots of improvement coming out of this push. Of course, economically, we could also see big jumps in technological progress. But the thing is, they also noticed very big rate of health issues, especially related to stress. And so they saw it as an epidemic, especially technostress, which is linked to, of course, overuse of technology. And so the Japanese government took things in their hands. So they decided that they needed to look at the resources of the country and see what could be helpful for the population in this technostress epidemic. And so as they are a very much forested country, as I said, about 70% now forests they have, they decided that they could look at the benefits of nature and how this resource that they have plenty of can help people with that technostress. But of course, technostress exists everywhere. It's not just Japan. Japan had such a big problem just because they had experienced such big growth in technological development and also in economic growth in over such a short period of time. But really, technostress is now something that we experience worldwide. And I think this term might not be so familiar for many of us yet, but we will increase awareness about it, I think, in the upcoming years.
Definitely. I mean, you've actually brought out a book detailing the research that you've done, but also what I really like about the book is you actually give practical ways that people can do forest bathing. So I wondered if you might just pick one or two examples to talk about that you give in the book that might help people engage with this as an activity.
Sure, yeah. So the thing is, what I like to share with people, and of course what we were trying to share in the book, is that nature connection will look different according to every individual and their needs and their current situation. Because it's, of course, wonderful to say to someone who lives in the middle of Derby, say, I'm just picking a city, and say to them, hey, you should go to a forest. Well, if they're stuck all day in an office space and they have other commitments besides work, it's just not plausible that they'll be going to forest anytime soon. There's not going to be any benefit for them because it's just something that they might hear about and then give up on. But what we are trying to do at the Forest Bathing Institute is show how you can use different environments, including cities, including different types of forests or natural landscapes, to connect with nature, and how easy it can be, because the research shows that even 15 minutes in nature, if you're not using your phone, that's one condition, can help our health and well-being. And so we have spoken a lot to also the specialists who work with people with reduced abilities or different abilities and who can't go outside at all, not even in their garden or communal space. So for those people, there are still things you can do. So the research shows that even looking at the pictures of nature, even if they're on your phone or on your computer, that can help. Introducing natural sounds, such as listening when you're commuting to work and from work, listening to nature sounds can help. So even simple things such as looking outside your window when you are at an office and watching the clouds, that helps switch our attention from this concentration on the computer. It can give our eyes a moment to take a break from this very concentrated work. And there are lots of things that you can use and you're probably already doing without even thinking about it. So even taking food. So food is part of nature, of course, and we forget about that link. But even if you take food like at a slower pace and you try to notice the textures and the taste and the smells, that can already be an experience of nature connection. And so there are lots of ways, again, and there are lots of techniques to build on, but I would say the main thing for each one of us is to make sure that we do something, even a few minutes a day, of just stopping and maybe looking at a plant that you have on your windowsill, or maybe looking outside at the trees swaying in the wind, or maybe taking a few minutes break at work to sip that herbal tea and just notice the textures and the taste and the smells. So those mindful moments, and mindfulness is a big concept now, but it's a big part also of forest bathing. It refers to slowing down and taking time to notice things around, which has been shown to really impact us on a very deep level, including our brain neurology. And it can help us switch from that state of very directed attention, and it can help restore our ability to focus and concentrate, but also give us that space to look at things from a different angle. So sometimes things can be overwhelming, but when you take a step back, you suddenly can see another solution and you can see the problem in a different light.
I mean, that's all brilliant advice. And you actually have a bit in the book about where you talk about how to form a habit, because a lot of people will do it, will dip in and out, will dabble, will kind of think that's a really good idea, I need to start doing that. And then it maybe drifts off. What advice would you give to people who are looking to do this and incorporate it into their way of life?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's a great question. And in a sense, I think it's maybe one of the most important questions for anyone who is trying to take up a new health and well-being boosting practice. So I think many of your listeners already know that nature is good for us. And so you wouldn't need any extra proof, most likely. But it's all about how you start. So if you know it's good for you, where do you start? And most of us, of course, lose the track of our self-care time and the importance of it if we get too busy. So my advice is, as someone who does struggle arranging the schedule and the time to do things, is if you can pick a time in your day, and don't be too ambitious. I say time, I mean just 5 minutes would be great, to do something very simple. So again, there are suggestions in the book that you can try, which are very simple suggestions, such as I said, taking a tea break where you notice the smells of the herbs and the tastes of them, or just looking at a plant or looking outside the window. But then other things during the day you can incorporate, such as instead of taking a bus or driving to your work or to any location, you can choose to walk there. And if you walk on a street lined with trees, that already has an effect. And maybe walk a bit slower, or maybe take a few more minutes extra to slow down and just notice things around you rather than just rush from point A to point B. So for me, the main thing that helps is just giving ourselves a bit of time, like dedicating that time, whether it will be 5 minutes extra on your way to work, or maybe 5-10 minutes extra on your way back from work to visit a green space or to walk on a tree-lined street, or just 5 minutes if you can't move your schedule at all, you can't go out. And many of us will be now in a situation where we are taking care of kids during summer holidays. Just taking those 5-minute break, looking outside the window with a cup of tea, and just letting ourselves enjoy nature outside the window.
Excellent advice. If people wanted to do this, again, I'm kind of assuming it's more of a solitary activity, but are there any groups or organisations that could provide guidance, or maybe even somebody might need a mentor to get into it, or they might prefer to do it in a group? Is that an option?
Yeah, so all those are an option. So it's like with any practice, if you have tried yoga, right? You can do yoga on your own. There are, of course, some things you need to be careful about, but you can. And of course, you can use videos online, etc. Meditation, same. But besides doing it yourself, you can also join a group. So this is the same with forest bathing. And that's why I am mindful that most people with the pace of life that we have might not have that ability to go to forest for 2-3 hour immersion. So it's all about being realistic of what you can do at this moment, but also knowing that if you might have extra time, such as maybe you have a weekend off, you can join some of the forest bathing groups, and you can see the groups that we are running. We run some regular groups across the UK, or you can join some of the forest bathing guided groups near you by other guides. You can basically even do a virtual forest bathing now. We don't do that yet, but there are lots of options out there. And I think now that we are also seeing forest bathing has been part of green social prescribing in Surrey, UK. So that means that we've already done a few of those runs, but those are funded sessions. And that means if you go to your GP and they deem that forest bathing can be helpful to your health and well-being, or to the condition that you present with, they might direct you to a funded group in your area that is free to attend because it is funded. But of course, it needs to be running at the time. So that is why we are currently the Forest Bathing Institute. We are creating a charity so that we can focus more on that aspect of our work, and so that we can run more funded sessions, because currently we run sessions for public which are paid, but also sessions for corporates and some funded sessions. But we hope to make it more accessible to people so that it can be part of your healthcare. And of course, there are extra benefits of joining the groups, because you can meet with other people. Some people feel uncomfortable or even not feeling safe if they go to forest alone. And it's the same as if you are doing yoga on your own, if some of us are experiencing that. If you do it on your own, you can still benefit and you can learn even how to do it very well. But then if you join a class with someone who is experienced, you might be able to go deeper and have few more benefits. It's not to say that you can't do it on your own, but sometimes that extra advice can be very helpful.
Excellent advice, thank you. And I just wanted to give one final shout out to the photographer for the book, because actually the photos are beautiful. Was that one person that took those?
Yes, that's Dominic Tyler, and I'm going to have an interview with him myself, because we actually had such an amazing response about his photos as well as the prints. by Rosanna Morris. So we are going to have a bit of a chat with both of them because their work is incredible. And Dominic has worked over years gathering those photos. And I'm going to learn more about how he got those photos.
Thank you, Olga, not only for the interview, but for the pioneering work you're doing in this area. And thanks to you for listening. If you like this episode, I encourage you to listen to episode 48, Forest Bathing, and episode 118, The Takachi Millennium Forest with Dan Pearson and Midori Shintani. Also, if you're listening to the back catalogue, you'll notice there are ads right at the end of the episodes. And I hope this doesn't disrupt your listening experience. And for now, this is very much a trial. I've got no intention of sticking ads in the middle of the episodes, as I know all too well this is one of the most annoying things for a podcast listener. Also, I don't know what the ads are. What you hear is specific to your region, but hopefully there's nothing offensive or irritating, but let me know if there is. Of course, you can switch off before the ads are played, but I suspect the minimal revenue generated by them depends on whether or not you stick around to listen. This is in no way a guilt trip to make you listen to them, just an explanation of the process. If you don't want to listen to the ads, fair enough, but would you instead consider leaving the podcast a review in whatever app you're listening in? It does help to get the podcast heard. Thank you. You can download or listen to the podcast direct from the website rootsandall.co.uk. Please also check out my Patreon, where you can make a one-off donation or take out a monthly subscription to help support the podcast. Because if you enjoy the show, please help it continue. I also have a GoFundMe where you can make a one-off donation. Even a one-off donation of £1 helps, and I'll be really grateful for your support. So please go to Patreon or GoFundMe and search for Roots and All Podcast